What's up, guys? This is Corey here with Good Evening Tech, and today we are going to learn how to create a PHP application. So remember, if you like the content, please feel free to subscribe and hit that like button. So first thing we are going to go over is what the application is. I have it right here in my local dev environment, so it's going to be an appointment time shower, and you can reserve an appointment with it. So how it works is, let's say on the 15th of October at 11 o'clock, you want an appointment, put in Corey, then a email address, and you just hit save changes, and you can see that it blocks off that time. So this course is for the basics of PHP, the basics of running a Linux server, and that's pretty much it. So the two paths you can go down for this is either Xampp, which is a cross-platform container for Linux, or WSL. So WSL is Windows subsystem for Linux. It lets you run Linux on Windows. So throughout this course, I'm going to be using that. But if you don't want to go through the configuration or anything like that with WSL, you can just use Xampp and it'll work relatively the same. So if you've never heard of Xampp, pull it up right here. It is a program that is offered for Windows, Linux, and OS X, and you just download it, and it creates a little virtual container that already has PHP installed, has MySQL, Tomcat, and a couple other things. But if you're going to go this way, download the PHP 8 version, and pretty much for this whole video, feel free to watch through, but a lot of this stuff is already configured by Xampp, like your SQL Server, Apache, and all of that. So if you're deciding to go with the WSL way, it's only for Windows, but once we get past installation of WSL, if you have a Linux device, you can install everything the same way. If you have an Apple product that runs OS X and you want to run your own Apache server, look into downloading Homebrew and installing your Apache server and MySQL through that package manager. But what we're going to go over is the installation of WSL. So the first thing you want to do, Microsoft has great documentation for this to explain how you go through the whole process. You'll run this command in PowerShell. It says you can use Windows Command Prompt. I've never done it. I've always done it through PowerShell. But you'll run WSL --install. It'll go through the entire process with you, and it will probably ask you to restart your computer. Once you're done with that, you can install your own versions of Linux, but the easiest thing to do is go to the Windows Store and just download one of the versions of Linux from there. So I'm going to download Ubuntu 18.04 LTS. I would recommend for you, what my server that has the finished product is running on is on 20.04. Just install the most recent version. But once you download it, what you're going to do is hit launch. Before we hit launch, if you want to follow along to look exactly like me, I'm going to be using a program called Windows Terminal that looks like this. So it's a tablatured terminal. It's super nice. It's something that Windows gives away for free, and it's through the store here. But as you can see, I have my 20.04 server right here, and I do have an instance of Debian. What I'm going to do real quick is turn that server off. Then I'm going to hit launch on 18.04. So this runs just like a normal Linux installation that's terminal only. So you'll have this bar show up. I'm going to create my account. Once you set up everything there, what I am going to do is actually close out of Windows Terminal first. Then I'm going to close out of this. I'm going to go over here, and as long as everything was done right, maybe I have to restart everything for that. But what I'll do here is I'll just hit launch. Once I restart my computer, it should show up, but later on in the course we'll be using Windows Terminal, but this works exactly the same. The first thing you want to do with any new Ubuntu installation, any Linux installation, is run sudo apt update. It's going to ask for your password. Now what this is doing is how Ubuntu updates is it will have repositories. These are all these, you can see all the names up here showing up. These are servers that have the update files in them. Once it's done with that, we're going to run another command to actually update the system. So if you see apt update, how it is right now, it's actually not updating the system. As we can see here, there's 162 packages that can be upgraded. So what I will run is sudo apt upgrade, hit enter, and it's going to start upgrading all of this. Now, like I said, if you're going with the Xampp way, you don't have to do any of this right here. If you're using OS X with Apple and using Homebrew, the process is just going to use brew to update everything for you. But while that is updating, I wonder why PowerShell's not working. It might just be because I freshly installed it. We're going to wait for that to go through. It's almost done. Let's see, while I wait, I'm very impatient. Oh, still nothing for it. Oh, there it is. See what happens when I hit save. Opens a new PowerShell. We're going to do two things at once, so ignore this screen over here, but over here, this Ubuntu installation, if you're using an actual computer that runs Ubuntu, most of the stuff will already be installed, but when you use WSL, it installs a bare bones version of Ubuntu that has really nothing on it. So we're going to install a lot of things that come with other installations of Ubuntu. So the first thing we're going to do is install Apache. So Apache is a, what's it called? It is a web server. It's when somebody goes to a URL, Apache or Nginx, those are the words you'll hear for it, they'll actually handle serving the web files. So serving means giving them out. But now that that installation's done, we're also going to install MySQL Server. .04. I have no idea what I'm doing with this. Let's just see what happens while that's running in the background. Appearance Advanced, save. PowerShell, open JSON file. Ooh. All right, that's done over there. Going crazy with this. So, something unique about Ubuntu with WSL is running the actual server. So, when you want to run your Apache server, if you've ever seen documentation that shows, here I'm going to pull up an example that we're actually going to use to install something. Just going to go over this now so I don't forget. You'll see things that say sudo systemctl restart Apache 2. WSL doesn't have systemctl. It uses the older service model. So if we want to start Apache, instead what we do, or any service, you'll do sudo service 2 Apache 2 start, and it'll start the server. But we're actually going to run this real quick. So I want to do this entire project in PHP 8. PHP 8 is not a part of Ubuntu's repositories yet. So what we're going to do is add the repositories that let us install it. So going down here, the first thing it wants us to do, sudo apt install software properties common. All right, it's already installed. Sudo add apt repository ppa. All right, so what the first one did is it made sure we just had a package installed. But the second command is the more important one. It is adding a repository to our list. So whenever you run sudo apt update, it's going to make sure that it updates that list with that repository we just added. But we're going to go down here, type sudo add 8.0, add the Apache module for it. Let that run through, do what it needs to do. And whenever you add something to Apache or you change a file within Apache, you need to restart the entire server. The entire server being the Apache server, not the Ubuntu instance. So we'll go here, sudo service apache 2. Remember, it's different than the systemctl. Restart. If you try doing systemctl, it just yells at you. But now our Apache server is restarted. What we're going to do is run ifconfig, grab our internal IP address, hit copy there, put it up here. And as long as you did everything correctly, you should see this screen right here with the Apache Ubuntu default page. So it's good to go there. Now let's make sure that our SQL server works. So what we'll do is sudo service mysql start. All right, MySQL is always a joy to work with on WSL. No matter what version of Ubuntu, anything, it never likes to work right. But once it goes through all the heartache of all the errors, it usually works out. So the first thing I always like to do to check if it works is run MySQL secure installation. So these lists that go down here, I always like to get rid of everything on here. SQL, when you install it, has a bunch of test profiles and a bunch of stuff just so you can see if it works, but I like to get rid of that. Strong for passwords. You're going to set up your own password here. Perfect. There we go. Remove anonymous users. I always hit yes for that. Disallow root login remotely. Turn that off. Remove. Reload table privileges, and now it's working. So let's try to start it up. It's probably going to yell at us. Oh, nope, there we go. Perfect. So to get into your SQL installation the first time, type sudo mysql, and it should go to a view like this. So show databases. These are the basic databases that come with MySQL. It's not something that you're really going to touch. It's used by MySQL to control MySQL. So there's niche cases where you'll have to use it. If you're a database engineer, it's way above my level of what these are exactly used for, besides looking at users and passwords and whatnot. But easy way to get out of it, just type exit, and it'll bring you back to this. So make sure on my list we got everything we need to get started with this. One big thing for WSL is whenever you go into a new window like this, you restart this actual computer, or pretty much anytime you're using WSL, you need to restart the services. You need to start them in general. So let's say I turned off my computer here and I tried to log back in and this didn't work. Whenever I turn WSL on, you need to do sudo service apache 2 start and sudo service mysql start. That'll make sure both services are running. But WSL, like I said, it works a little bit different than every other version of Linux I've used. It still is Linux. It's running in its own sandbox to do what it needs to do. But on top of that, the only thing I've noticed outside of WSL is your internal IP address, this one that you use to see the actual server. Every time I restart my computer, it does change. Easy way to know your IP, Ethernet 0, which this works in a sandbox, so it's in its own little area. This right here is the internal address on this computer. So if you want to test stuff, you just go to this init right here. And yeah, that's pretty much it for this. So this was the setup to the entire project. I'm going to start another video to show, exactly how we're going to set up the project with our PHP files and get everything going. If you like the video, please hit that like button, and I'll see you real soon.